Hi everybody, my name's Aaliyah and welcome to my channel, Aaliyah Uncharted. Today I'm going to be doing the mid-year freakout tag, which is kind of a staple video in the booktube community. We are going to be kind of going over some of the books that I've read so far this year, some books that I really liked, books that I maybe didn't like as much, and just do kind of a check-in on where we're at so far halfway through 2020. So let's get started. Okay, so the first question is, what is the best book you've read so far in 2020? Going in hard. All right, so probably if I had to pick a single book, the best book I've read in 2020 has to be The Power by Naomi Alderman. If nothing else than because I did a whole dedicated review on this book, but also this just made me feel so many things and affected me so strongly. This is not a perfect book by any means, but it just affected me so strongly and has made me think so much that I can't do anything except say this is one of my favorites of the year. So I'd have to say The Power. But I also have a couple honorable mentions, and so the first would have to be Felix Ever After by Kacen Callender. I loved this book. This is just so good. I'll probably talk about this more in my June wrap-up, but I adored this. I adored Felix, and I just loved everything about this. This was such a wonderful time, wonderful experience. The other book that I have to mention here is Darius the Great Is Not Okay. I read this, this was one of the first books that I read this year, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. This was just wonderful and kind of heartbreaking, but also in a good way. I loved this. I loved this, and again, I loved Darius, and this was just, it gave me so many feelings, so I have to mention this. Okay, question number 2 is, what is the best sequel you've read so far in 2020? And I haven't read a whole lot of sequels this year, but the best that I've read would have to be Ravensong by TJ Klune. This is the second book in the Green Creek series, the sequel to Wolfsong, and I just loved this. I loved the whole experience of reading this. I loved getting to revisit the characters from Wolfsong, and I loved our main character in this one is Gordo, who is a grumpy, angsty witch boy, and it was so much fun to read. And what I love about this series in particular is while there is kind of a central romance, there's also a whole lot of plot. So it was just so much fun reading this. I loved the experience of reading it, and it made me so excited for the next book. So yeah, I'd have to give that to Ravensong. Although if I were to give an honorable mention, I'd have to say #Rev by Cambria Hebert, which is the sequel to #Junkie, and it was just a really good continuation of Drew and Trent's relationship, so I did really like that, but I'd have to give it to Ravensong for this one. Okay, so question number 3 is new release you haven't read yet but want to. And honestly, I don't really keep up with new releases a whole lot, but Take a Hint, Dani Brown just came out, and I want to read this so bad. Get a Life, Chloe Brown was a book I read in February, and I adored it. I loved that book, and so I'm so excited for this sequel companion, this next book by Talia Hibbert about the Brown sisters. So I'm so excited to read this book. It should be so good. Yeah, because Chloe's book gave me so much joy, and I can just imagine that Dani's will do the same. So I'm really, really looking forward to it, and I need to get to it ASAP. Okay, so question number 4 is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Hands down, my most anticipated release for 2020 in general, overall, has to be Loveless by Alice Oseman. This comes out July 9th, so depending on when this video comes out, it may have already come out, but I have to wait for it to come from the UK anyway, so I'll be waiting for a bit, and I have an actual physical need to read this book. I love Alice Oseman as an author, and I have been looking forward to this book from her for so long, ever since it was announced, because it is an Own Voices Arrow Ace story, and I need it. I need it with every fiber of my being, and so I'm so excited to have this book in my hands. The other two books that I'm really looking forward to later in 2020 have to be Darius the Great Deserves Better. So the sequel to Darius the Great is Not Okay. And that's coming out August 25th, I think. And I'm really looking forward to that as well. And then Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. I was really looking forward to this book, and then it got pushed back to September, which hurt my heart, and so now I'm just really anticipating it even more now, and I'm just really excited about both of these. They should just be great. I have great books in my future, is what it comes down to. Number 5 is the biggest disappointment of the year so far. And this would have to be Circe by Madeline Miller. And I'm really bummed to say that, because this wasn't a bad book and I didn't hate it. It's by no means the worst book I've read this year so far. I was just expecting to love it. I was expecting this to be at least a 4-star book for me, because I really love mythology. I really love Greek mythology, and this book was hyped so much that when it was just okay, it was just this massive disappointment. And so it was just such a bummer. And I'm sad to say that I'm probably not going to read The Song of Achilles, because this was just such a bummer. This whole thing was just so sad, and I really wish I had loved it more, but I just didn't. Number 6 is what is the biggest surprise of 2020, and that would have to go to The Power by Naomi Alderman. I was not expecting to love this as much as I did. I got this years ago. It had been sitting on my shelf for actual years, and I had no idea how strongly this book was going to affect me. I had no clue. And so the fact that this became a favorite book of mine, I'm shocked. So this would have to be the biggest surprise, and obviously a pleasant surprise. I'm just so glad that I finally got around to reading this, because this is just incredible. Question number 7 is, what is your favorite new author, either debut or new to you? And I can't really call any author a new favorite author unless I've read several books by them, and I haven't done that with any author so far this year. The only author I've read multiple books from is TJ Klune, and that's just, I guess, also Cambria Hebert, so series. And I don't think I count series in that either. I'd want to try like several different kinds of books from an author. So that being said, I think the authors that I'm really wanting to delve into more, that I think have the potential to be new favorite authors, are TJ Klune. He wrote, obviously, the Green Creek series, and recently wrote The House by the Cerulean Sea, and is going to be coming out with The Extraordinaries later this year. So he has a lot going on, and so I have a feeling I'm going to like a lot more of his books. And then the second is Kacen Callender, the author of Felix Ever After, and I adored this book so much. So I know that they also have a couple other books that are getting just as rave reviews as this one. So I think King and the Dragonflies and also Hurricane Child are two of their books I'd be really interested in reading after loving this one so much. So I think both of these authors have real potential to be new faves for me. Question number 8 is newest fictional crush, which isn't really something that I do. I don't really crush on fictional characters. But if I were to kind of flip this a little bit and make it favorite new love interest, I have to say Redford Morgan from Get a Life, Chloe Brown. He is just chef's kiss. We love Red so much. What a man. He was just amazing, and I loved reading his perspective in that book, and he was just an overall wonderful character, so I'd have to say him. Just check out that book, man. Question number 9 is newest favorite character, and so I'm going to just be repeating myself this whole video. Felix from Felix Ever After. I love this boy with my whole heart. I loved reading about him. He is so young and messy, and I just loved him. I loved reading his perspective. I loved everything about him, really. So I just love him. One of my newest favorite characters, for sure. My other new favorite character has to be Darius from Darius the Great Is Not Okay. I loved this boy from the very beginning just because he seemed to love tea as much as I do. And then my love just grew as the book went on, and this kid, I adore him. And so, yes, definitely a new favorite character, which is another reason why I need the sequel as soon as possible. Question number 10 is book that made you cry. Now, I very, very rarely cry when reading books. That's just not a thing, even if I find it really sad. I just don't cry very easily in general. I sobbed like a child when reading this book. When I read it the first time on audio, and I remember I was driving in my car on the way home from something in January when we still had things to do, and I was crying so hard. I ended up relating to Darius so much more than I ever thought I would, and so his struggles and the things that he has to grapple with in this book hit me so hard, and I couldn't help it. I was just sobbing, and in the best possible way. I wouldn't even call this a sad book necessarily. It's just, I felt for him so much, and I think just relating to him so hard just punched me in the face. Question number 11 is book that made you happy. And I have to say, Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This was just, it was so good. It just made me so happy reading this. I loved the entire process, the entire experience of reading this book. It was so good. We love Chloe. She is wonderful. We love Redford Morgan. He is amazing, and we love him. And it just made me so happy. It was such a good, solid romance, and it was just such a wonderful time and a wonderful experience. I just loved that book. An honorable mention would have to be #Junkie and #Rev by Cambria Hebert. These also made me so happy because it's just such a guilty pleasure romance between these two boys, and it made me so happy. It was so silly and so cheesy, and I enjoyed every second of it. So yeah, I also loved those books thoroughly. Question number 12 is, what is the most beautiful book you've bought this year? I don't normally buy a lot of books, but man, this year I've bought so many good books. And the first one should probably be a surprise to nobody at this point. Felix Ever After by Kacen Callender. Can we just talk about Felix? Look at him. He's beautiful. I love everything about this cover. Like, he's gorgeous. Another book that I just love the cover of is Darius the Great Is Not Okay. I love the colors on here. I love the landscape or cityscape we have here. It's just, I love everything about this cover. I think it's beautiful. And then the third beautiful book that I bought this year is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I had to go out of my way to make sure I bought this cover because I thought it was so gorgeous. The other cover that seems to be going around I think is super ugly. And so, but like, I love this. I love the whole galaxy that you can see on this, and I think it really suits the atmosphere of the book, and I think it's just overall beautiful. Look at it. Look at it. So the final question number 13, is what books do you need to read by the end of the year? So many. We could start with all of the books on my TBR shelf. All of those. Also, particularly In Other Words by Jhumpa Lahiri. I meant to read this in May and I never got around to it. Also, Crier's War by Nina Varela. I've been really wanting to get to this one soon. A couple of other ones off the top of my head are Sourdough by Robin Sloan, Summer of Salt by Katrina Leno, Watership Down, Persuasion by Jane Austen, Autobiography is another one, Middle Game by Shannon McGuire, There by Tommy Orange, really want to read that. And honestly, so many more. I could just keep listing them. I could just go down my whole Goodreads, TBR. There's so many books I'm really wanting to get to this year, but that's just kind of a handful. Okay, so that is it. That's the end of the tag. This was really fun for me because I got to talk about some books I haven't been able to talk about on this channel yet. So I really hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. So yeah, if you liked this video, go ahead and hit that like button. That'd be great. And hit that subscribe button if you want to know when I post new videos. Go ahead and hop down into the comments and let me know if you've read any of these books and what is the best book you've read so far this year. I'd love to know. Yep, so that is all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it, and I will talk to you in the next one. Bye! Okay, so that was the rest of the, that was the blah blah blah. That's all I got for you today. That was weird. That's all, folks. I loved Chloe Brown's. I just got scared by a notification on my laptop. That's embarrassing.